Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited to learn about what it is that you do. Would you mind just kind of introducing yourself and telling me a little bit about city insulation?
Yeah, hi. My name is Adam Turner, and I am the founder of City Insulation. We're a soundproofing and acoustics business based out of Manchester, UK, servicing most of the UK really. We do a lot of commercial soundproofing, commercial acoustics, going into people's places of work and making them more functional through treatment of their spaces, essentially.
I think that this is something that a lot of businesses perhaps in the past haven't paid attention to. And today I really want to kind of highlight the benefits that organizations, um, like the fruits of what they can achieve by insulation and soundproofing. So, my first question for you is how do you think organizations can ensure that their office meeting or consultancy rooms provide necessary privacy for employees to communicate?
Sure. I think this day and age, we have a huge emphasis on privacy and confidentiality for obvious reasons. Unfortunately, meeting rooms, office spaces, don't lend themselves so well to these confidential conversations and the privacy that is required for those conversations. So if we imagine that there's these sensitive conversations happening, we need to for that confidentiality to be in place. There needs to be adequate soundproofing and management of noise within that not just that space, but going to other spaces in the surrounding area. It's extremely important. You know, we work with customers. Solicitors, obviously, it's extremely confidential information that's being conducted in conversation. There's service users for charities um, who are having quite intimate conversations about their experiences, negative experiences. If that confidentiality is broken, then you have lost that patient, you've lost that service user, and they continue to suffer. You know, they don't get the help that they need. So it's extremely important to have this barrier, this safe space, and that's what we help organizations try to achieve.
It's so true. In a previous role that I had, some of us were remote employees and some of us went into the office. And if you had meetings planned for the day, you would work from home because it was so noisy trying to have a meeting in an open plan office. Um, what measures do you think can be implemented to manage noise levels in like a large open plan office or call center? And what impact can that have on employees and customer interactions?
Open plan offices, they're sort of like the modern day design that offers a very collaborative approach. But if they're not implemented, excuse me, in the right way, then there can become issues. We've got cross contamination of noise. Um, so the problem we have there is if we know from studies that have been conducted, if someone's concentration is broken, it takes them at least 20 minutes for them to get that focus back. So having the open plan offices is fine. It offers a very nice collaborative way to work, but we need to do it in the right way. So we don't have to have hard walls. We can acoustically treat certain areas and put soft partitions in. We can include the use of baffles and rafts in the ceiling, acoustic panels and rafts in the ceiling, on the walls. And the overall thing that we're trying to achieve here is to soak up as many of the first reflections of noise. So if somebody over here is having a conversation, like a breakout collaboration with a team member, they don't necessarily need to be heard by Sharon in accounts or the MD who's trying to have a video call in like the beanbag space, breakout space over here, or whatever it might be. It needs to be thought about, and often it isn't thought about. So people put the desks in, rows of desks, big open plan office, and you just get, especially in call centers, you get such a large amount of noise that's being generated by people's voices, and it's traveling far. So that offers confusion, and it offers confusion a bit, and a bit of mayhem for those employees in that space, because they've just got so much noise that's going on. But also customers on the other end of the line, they can hear the craziness of what's going on, unless they've got really good microphones that isn't picking that up. But if you're in an environment like that, you get raised anxiety levels, you get stress, you get excess sick days. It's all been studied. It's very, very important. If you're paying for somebody to be in that space, you want to get the maximum productivity out of them whilst maintaining good mental health, and they want to come to work. They want to enjoy that space and work for you. You've considered them in their workplace. They're going to look after you, and that's what we try to promote whenever we go into spaces like that. We're trying to make them look inviting, aesthetically pleasing places to be, and that, coupled with the results of bringing the ambient noise down, getting that increased productivity, just gives people so much more work satisfaction.
So you're saying it's possible to minimize noise within like a modern open plan office without just sticking up drywall?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So we can put in, like I mentioned before, we've got the baffles, we've got wall panels, we've got the rafts, we've got soft partition screenings, recycled plastic bottle screening. So there's a sustainable angle that we can take with these things too, and that just puts in these sort of soft partitions to not feel like people are closed in, but acoustically the noise is being absorbed before it's going off down to Sharon and accounts. Um, other sort of options that we're exploring at the moment, which are proving quite popular, but there's nobody in the sort of the central England, Manchester area. We're about to embark on a big training course, and we're going to be doing some seamless acoustic plaster training. So that in big areas is completely discreet. It just looks like a plastered ceiling. You would never know that it's absorbing noise at a really high rate. So there's ways that you can do it that enhances the design aesthetic, and there's ways that can be done. This can be done in a more discreet way. There's lots of different options. So we consult with our customers and sort of work out how do you want to approach it. Do you want it to be something that we can get rendered up for you, and show you your office with this new treatment in, looking punchy or discreet, or muted colors, or cloud rafts, or do you want circular or square? There's lots of different ways that we can treat these spaces, and we just sort of try to get an idea from the customer. How do you want this to be? Is it discreet, or are you looking for something that's pretty out there, or cool, or however you want it to be? And then it's like I say, a consultative approach. We come up with the renders, or if people just trust us, we sort of put something to them on email, show them some examples of what we've done in the past, and we do the job that way.
Okay, you mentioned something just now that I just wanted to come back to when you spoke about acoustics. So it's not just about minimizing sound from Sharon and accounting, but also about improving the acoustics of a room. So how can organizations improve acoustics, for example, minimize echo in a meeting room to ensure more effective communication and productivity?
So So what we've sort of spoken about so far, a lot of it is to do with acoustics. Certainly in the open plan office, the soundproofing, um, we spoke about with regards to individual offices or consultancy rooms. That's stopping the noise, the passage of noise from one place to another. Acoustics is about controlling the ambient noise within a space. So we want to reduce as many of the first reflections. Noise as it comes out of my mouth is scattering everywhere. It's bouncing off the ceiling, the floor, the laptop screen, and then it just goes this way. Depending on how reflective these surfaces are, it will keep on going until it gets absorbed. The energy of my voice in those air particles will eventually get absorbed. The more reflective the surfaces that are in your space, so often we're coming into boardrooms and office spaces with their modern designs. They're really hard offices, office desks. You've got plasterboard ceilings. Often you can have quite high ceilings as well. Lots of glass partitioning. This is a very reflective environment. So what we do, we take some measurements. We take quite a lot of measurements of each of the different materials that are in that space. We then put that into a Sabine calculation, and we work out what the reverberation for that room is based on all of those reflections. So it will spit out a number based on the time it takes for 60 decibels of noise to reduce to nothing, and that is across a frequency range of sort of 80 hertz up to 8,000 hertz. Once we've done that, we can then, with our calculations, we can then input into that calculator, okay, if we put this much of a class C absorber, like for example the slat panel behind me, how much of that will we need to bring that reverberation down to 1 second, which is what's classed as the optimal time for an office space, for optimal communication. We might want to mix that up with some stretch fabric, and the stretch fabric might be a class B, in which case we need less of the class B, more of the class C, and it sort of goes from there. We start building the design. We can put some rafts in that are a class A absorber. Okay, so if we've got this much class A, this much B, this much C, we're going to get to the 1 second, and it's going to look like this. So there's very little guesswork that goes into it, and we can make it look really good as we're doing it.
Amazing. You mentioned it earlier, some of the benefits that in like an office working environment on employee productivity and mental health. By implementing some of these acoustic strategies, what benefits can organizations experience?
Yeah, so the benefits for organizations with a good acoustic design, you're getting people who are coming into work who are calmer because they know that they know they're coming into a calm environment. If I'm calm towards you, then that's going to make your day start off well. They're coming into a calm environment also. They're having a calm conversation with you, and so the day starts off on the right foot. If there's a lot of noise and Anne from accounts is just on the phone shouting at people asking for those invoices, and everybody else is trying to get on with their work, and her noise is not being soaked up quick enough, absorbed quick enough, then it becomes an irritation for people. So then they start getting stressed out. With increased noise comes stress. That's just part of the human response. Our cortisol levels raise, and we become in a little bit of a state of flight or fight. So we're not necessarily going to be having those good conversations with people because we're going to be a little bit aggy. We're going to be on the phone to our customers, but then we're getting disturbed and we can't quite, someone over there is making a noise, so I'm having to put my finger in my ear, or it creates this stressful environment. And when we're stressed, we unable to focus, so we can't focus on the task at hand. We can't get that job done. Every time we lose our focus, we're losing 20 minutes to get back into that focus, but by which time we've already been disturbed again, because marketing have now started a video that they're doing for some Instagram clip that they're trying to send out, and it goes like this. It's if you've got the noise being absorbed quickly, it creates this calm environment, it creates focus, it creates productivity, and ultimately for a business owner, you're going to get way more out of your employees. You've shown to them that you care about the environment that they work in, and so they will in turn hopefully appreciate that, and they will work hard. You will get the good productivity out of them, and it'll be good for your business.
That really is so true, how noise can influence your mental space. I think a lot of organizations, whether they be offices or agencies or even schools, can potentially deal with noise complaints from neighbors. So, how do you think that organizations can manage these kinds of noise complaints from neighbors?
Um, I think when this sort of situation happens, so for example, we had a school in Salford contact us. They had one side of a big semi-detached Victorian mansion, and it was a private school. And as part of their tradition, they would sing and dance in class before each lesson started. And unfortunately, the house next door was owned by a private family, and they paid a lot of money for that house. It was a huge house, and the owner of the school came to me and said, "Look, we are a school. We've been here for years and years. They've moved in next door, and we're getting a lot of complaints. It's not good for my school. It's not good for business. It's not good for anybody involved in this situation. So what can we do about it?" So when we looked at the building, we realized that they were going to have to go for a pretty big spec to be able to mitigate this noise issue. Unfortunately for the school's floors, from all of the dancing, it wasn't built for a school. Remember, it wasn't built for the amount of students that were supposed to be in it. But so the floors were a little concave, shall we say? So if I did the calculations, and across one, two, three floors, I think it was, we were putting in about 8 ton of weight. So we couldn't really stress that floor anymore. So what we had to do was put in some steels in the basement, and build and weave the system and the structure through the whole of the school, and transfer that weight into those steels into the foundations of the building. We offer two different soundproofing types of wall soundproofing system. Sometimes you're going to need some ceiling, sometimes you're going to need some floor, but a lot of the time, if we're trying to attenuate noise through the walls into our neighbours, we're installing our independent wall. It's our best wall that we do. It starts at a 40 kg per square meter system. It's completely independent from the wall. That is actually conducting the noise, so we have that isolation. We use really dense acoustic rock wool to absorb any noise that gets into that cavity behind here. We want that soaked up really fast. If there's an open space, then that can become a bit of an echo chamber, an amplifier of noise. So we have to have that core insulated. Then we're using layered mass, deadened mass. We have to deaden the mass that we put in, the boards that we put in, to stop them from resonating. When noise is then hitting that system, certainly from the school side, the noise is hitting that wall. It's got, in this case, it had 6 layers, hard, deadened, hard, deadened, hard, all the way through. Then it's got the acoustic absorber in the middle. It's completely isolated from the wall, and the results were brilliant. Mr. Pines said that they'd never had a complaint in 6 months since we installed the job. So it works very well, but the spec has to be right.
How can reducing noise levels in classrooms ensure that children are able to learn more effectively? And what impacts can excessive noise have on a child's ability to learn?
There's a set of guidelines that were released by the government called BB93, and this document details everything that a new school developer can do to give the optimal learning conditions for a child from an acoustic point of view. We know that if a child is disturbed through noise, then they're not going to be able to focus on the task at hand, whatever the teachers ask them to do. So controlling noise within the classroom, controlling noise coming in from the classroom next door if they're doing something a bit noisy, and over here we're trying to study in this classroom. We need to make sure that those things are taken care of. Without that, the child loses focus, and it's not able to learn in the way that it should be able to. This is going to have a knock-on effect. The child, a lot of the time, if you've got children who are a little restless, shall we say, they're going to get distracted so easily, then they're going to distract the rest of the classroom. Noise is quite it's something that's part of our everyday lives, but it's insidious. If it's not controlled, we don't quite understand how much of an impact it can have on our days. It's the same for an office worker as it is for a child. If a child's coming into a classroom that is noisy, it's got glass, lots of glass windows or partitions. It's got a tiled floor. It's got plasterboard walls. It's reflective. Then that is going to have an impact on that child's day massively, because it's going to get distracted. It's going to lose its focus. It's not going to be able to do its work, and it's going to be stressed. So it's going to enter the flight or flight mode. It's going to increase the anxiety in that child throughout the day if each classroom is the same, and they're going to go home feeling stressed and not wanting to come back to school so much. Not many kids want to go to school anyway, but if they did, then it would be a much better place for them to go if it was a nice, calm, welcoming atmosphere. And we see great results when we've installed these rafts, these panels. Especially in places where there's kids with special needs. They especially need reverberation to be brought down as low as possible, pretty much. The less distraction they have, the less anxiety they have, the more they enjoy their lives.
Can you tell me, what do you think some of the impacts are on, I'm going to say, noise pollution on a child who has ADHD?
Yeah, by the very nature of the condition, it's attention deficit. So anything like noise, if a child's trying to concentrate in class and it's got they're mowing the lawn outside, or Carl at the back is flicking his ruler against the table while he's trying to think. All of these things, there's such a big impact on a kid with ADHD's day. They're going to lose the focus. It's going to build up the anxiety in them. They have a hard enough time trying to concentrate as it is, because they get distracted so easily. If they could have the optimal environment to learn, then it's going to make things so much easier for them. It's going to give them the opportunities that they deserve as as a human being, you know. Like I meet a lot of people who have autism, they have Asperger's, they have ADHD, and it's not surprising because those people are hypersensitive to noise. Um, they we go through day to day life and noise is noise, and you know it's like crossing the road, it's like seeing a car pass you by or whatever it is. It's just a normal thing, but these people feel noise on a completely different level. So this is why for children with learning difficulties, BB93 is there to ensure that they get the optimal learning environments. They've recognized that kids with learning difficulties struggle with noise massively. So if we're making a school specifically for children with learning difficulties, we know that the reverberation time in those classrooms needs to be really low down, sort of zero point 0.7, zero point 0.5 seconds across the frequency spectrum. That is really going to help those children enjoy their day, learn, and live as much of a normal life as they can.
That's amazing. Wow, that's really amazing. Okay, I want to kind of shift it now from talking to schools to talking about like entertainment establishments. So I'm talking about like bars, restaurants, pubs. What is the importance of paying attention to noise control within these entertainment establishments?
So yeah, controlling noise for a bar is super important. We're coming at it from a soundproofing and an acoustics point of view. We need to stop the passage of the live music, the punters, the loud music through the speakers that we're playing. We need to stop that noise going outside. We need to stop it from going upstairs if there's tenants upstairs. We need to stop it going out of the terrace if you've got a terrace. And that is controlling that noise, soundproofing that bar is going to mitigate any complaints that you might get, and licensing coming round and talking to you, which nobody wants to have that visit really. So from a soundproofing perspective, it's kind of obvious. We can install acoustic doors, we can install acoustic glass, we can soundproof walls, ceilings, floors, to make sure that your space is optimal in terms of attenuation of noise. Ultimately, when we do that, we also need to then take care of HVAC, because if we tighten up something up so that it's airtight and put, you know, big fat heavy walls and acoustic glass and seal the doors with door seals, drop seals, things like that, we need to make sure that there's still then air coming into the space, so that it's still a nice environment to be in. Controlling the noise within that space is another massive area. If you're a bar or a restaurant, your whole business is based on what the produce you're putting out tastes like, what it looks like, what does the furniture feel like and look like, how does it feel to be in that space, is it comfortable to sit in, what's the plateware look like, what does the food look like. We eat with our eyes, but if you're a business owner, a bar or restaurant owner that is looking for the ultimate reputation, for your bar to really excel and for people to be there, to have the dessert, to have the coffee, to spend those extra pounds, we control the noise within these spaces in bars and restaurants, and we see instantly, they tell us instantly, we never thought we would be taking more revenue on a weekend. We were doing this because people were complaining, saying that it was just too noisy in our restaurant. We didn't think that they were sort of not staying for their full course of dishes. But from the second that you guys have installed this acoustic treatment, we're taking £500-600 or more per weekend, as a result of people wanting to stay, enjoy the space, ordering more drinks, ordering coffees, desserts. They're just there, and they're enjoying and they're spending, and So that it's a two-tone thing. They're getting rid of their negative reviews, especially from people who have hearing aids. If you have a hearing aid and you go into a reverberant space, you're not enjoying yourself. You're not enjoying your family. Your family aren't enjoying you. You're just going to eat your food and get out of there as quick as you can. And a lot of people these days do have hearing aids because of the amount of noise that's in the world, as we get to our sort of later age. So if we don't take care of that, we're kind of cutting off a whole age group population there that it could come and spend money in your bar or restaurant. So it's very, very important to consider this, the noise within a space, within your bar or restaurant space.
Can you kind of tell me what are the practical strategies that you can implement to address noise in a hospitality establishment? Like how do you put it into practice?
Yeah, so when we when we go to see a bar or a restaurant, we're looking for opportunities to install um, treatment. So sometimes we can do it. If you've got a booth section, and with a wall above it, we can put a stretch fabric in there, and we can make a nice detailed design of that. If you have uh, like a quite a high ceiling, then we can start putting in some baffles, and we can sort of do nice design with baffles. We did a Nutter restaurant called the Bird at Bertel, up in Haywood, and he's kind of like a famous TV chef. We did his restaurant up there. They were getting complaints about the noise. It was a gastro pub restaurant, and they were getting a lot of complaints about the noise. So we went in there, and I could just see straight away there was a big plasterboard ceiling, a tiled floor, and then they had a glass wall with a balcony. And this this sort of design, this aesthetic, is super, super reflective. So I knew that if we put a lot of treatment on the ceiling, that was really going to solve that issue. So I came up with a design to have three different square-sized acoustic rafts hung at different sort of levels, and we made a beautiful pattern out of it. We installed it through the night, so there was zero downtime to the restaurant. Um, and the results have been amazing. They're taking extra money over a weekend. They're taking way better reviews. It's just lifted their business to the next level. They're taking the taste, the touch, the smell, the sound, all of it into consideration, and that was like the missing cog in the machine, should we say.
So do you work with like a team of designers and architects as well? How do you come up with like the visual look of the space?
So I sort of come up with the concept from doing a site survey. We offer free site surveys to people. Um, but what we try to do is, in the initial stages, get some photos of the space, have a think about what potentially could be done, and then get some indicative pricing just over the phone, to say that you're looking at a ballpark of between this and this, depending on what we see when we come and do a site survey. If that looks and sounds fine to the customer, then we do the site survey, and I'm looking at verification that what I've thought of across over the phone or through the photos will work. So we've got to consider lighting, we've got to consider HVAC, making sure we're not covering over any ventilation or air conditioning. And then what we do, I come up with the design, and then we have the ability to render that up for a small fee, so people can see what it's going to look like before they actually buy. And that's a really good thing to do, because it takes any guesswork out. Like, obviously what's in my head, and what, even if I sketched it out, it's never going to be what that they're never going to be able to envisage exactly what it's like. And from there as well, it often evolves because they're like, okay, well, maybe we could put that color into that one panel, and that would be a nice little, and one over there, and they can punctuate it with their own style, and they feel like they're part of the design process themselves then. So there's a lot of different products and materials that can be used, and it's sort of a design consultative approach, I would say, to getting a nice acoustic treatment design to them.
Okay, so my next question is, nowadays we're seeing more and more institutions doing like content creation. So whether it's like a podcast studio or a recording studio or like a photographic studio in schools and in offices. When planning to build a recording or podcast studio, how can organizations effectively block external noise and contain the sound within the building for optimal recording?
If you're building a music podcast recording design studio, anything that needs quiet, then we're putting in some pretty heavy, not very pretty walls to start off with. We're putting in, if the floor, depending on the environment we're going into, sometimes the floor will need treating. If we've got a big, huge concrete slab underneath us, then it doesn't need to be quite as much. Similarly for the ceiling. So when we're soundproofing, there's a few different elements that we need to consider. Like I say, the walls, the door needs to. Often a lot of the noise is transferring through the door because that is something that opens and closes. It's not a sealed thing. So we might be putting in a secondary door. So you have a vestibule area. Each of those would have door seals on, making sure that when they close, there's a perfect seal around each of those doors. Then we have for things like live and control, music studios type setups. If we're soundproofing and we need to have like a nice pane, we did a job recently for Neck Deep. It's a band based in Chester. We put a huge, big visual glass acoustic control room pane going through a twin pane, sort of visual port through to control, so they can say, right, okay, take again. Or so when we're soundproofing, they're the elements that we want to consider. We also need to obviously make sure we're controlling the noise within that space as well, because if we don't, you're going to get a lot of reflections in there coming into the microphone, through the instruments, and it's not gonna sound great when it's recorded. So we've done we've completed a studio for a label called Run On Records. They've got the Coral, they've got the Lathams, and they've got a few other fairly big artists on their signing. And we did fully custom acoustics with LED hues around them. We took care of a big old oil boiler in the corner of the room, made sure that had adequate ventilation but wasn't a noise problem. We put in secondary glazing to make sure that the external windows that were there and there was no noise coming in through those. Secondary acoustic glazing. We put in vocal booth. Each of which, all had custom acoustic treatment. We were making it out of sustainable birch ply, with big cutouts on a big routing machine, with acoustic absorber behind. The possibilities are endless when it comes to creating a studio. It often comes down to how cool do you want this to look, but most importantly, what's your budget? Because you'd be surprised. People want to build a music studio. I had one come to me the other day, and they had £5,000 to build a full studio, and he said, we can extend my garage out the side, as well. And I'm a music producer, and I was like, how am I going to build an extension for £5,000? You know,
Egg boxes on the wall, kind of.
yeah, I just don't. Sometimes, so we have to sort of try and get an idea of budget, because these budgets can vary massively. But yeah, we've done a lot of music studios. We can do the full cabling, all of the lighting package, the HVAC. We can do it full turnkey solution.
Okay. Okay, so my final question, we've spoken about schools, we've spoken about offices. I think one of the most difficult areas to manage noise control is in industrial spaces. For example, like an industrial warehouse. What, firstly, are some of the benefits of noise control in busy industrial environments, and how can organizations mitigate excessive noise in these environments?
Yeah, so it's extremely important to have noise control things in procedures in place, because we as part of the health and safety, we need to make sure that people aren't exposed to excessive noise for prolonged periods of time, because obviously it affects your hearing in the long run. So sometimes this is done, and employees offer ear defenders, but often they're not really used, and then they're not enforced in the correct way. So it is super important, because at the end of the day, we all want to keep hold of our hearing, and industrial spaces, as we know, can be quite loud. So that's the first point, really. In terms of controlling noise within those spaces, if we think about an industrial warehouse with some maybe heavy plant machinery, we know that there's probably going to be a concrete or screed floor. There's probably going to be a metal ceiling, and there's probably going to be metal walls, or plasterboard walls at best. So all of those things there are highly reflective to noise. If noise is made within that space, it's going to bounce around, and it's going to echo around, and it's going to build up as the next machine down there makes more noise, and so on. So if that continues to happen over time, you're going to get a lot of stress from your employees. It's going to be a hectic place to work, and not particularly enjoyable. You might have fairly high staff turnover if these measures to make sure that your hearing's protected aren't enforced by people. But it can be mitigated by the likes of some acoustic treatment within that space. So we can put in there's some industrial sort of wall linings that we can put in, plant room liners. There's some very weather and sort of environmentally robust rafts and baffles that we can put in, which don't have to cost a lot of money. Also, these materials don't necessarily, because they're not aesthetically finishing products, they're kind of they can be more cost effective than you think. So it's about absorbing as much of that noise from that machine, or from that person, or from that hammer, before it hits that surface, and then that surface, and then that surface, and it just continues to go around and being reflected by those surfaces. If we can put something in the way that's going to punctuate that noise and absorb it, then we're going to go a long way to sort of making that a much nicer acoustic environment to work in. The
So,
benefits of that, sorry, just to sort of the benefits of having that treatment, not just from a legislation point of view, you are going to have a nicer environment for people to work. Yes, you probably are going to have ear defenders if you're working next to the machine or whatever it might be, but if you're working over there, you might not have to. The noise levels over there might have been measured, and it's actually fine over there since we've had this treatment put in. That's going to stop a lot of any potential litigation on the employer further down the line if there's any damage to hearing. It's going to stop sick days. It's going to make people want to come to work. It's going to encourage a sense of calm when they come into the workplace, and just the knock-on effects of that are huge. So it's something that should be considered, and is being more and more considered by warehouse and distribution type environment owners.